I'll do. I've got another fun story for us to go through, and by fun, it absolutely isn't. It's horrific. This is only a couple of days old, this story, so still very new to some people. But it's about our capital city in the UK, London, and about how has it reached, in my opinion, has it reached peak cultural enrichment yet? And is this story an example of the strength of diversity which appears to be plaguing the city at the moment? So here we go. London's worst boroughs for knife crime revealed. Capital had more reports of bladed weapons than any other city in 12 months at 13,405. That works out about 43 a day, which is almost two stabbings per hour. Although it does say with Southwark, Westminster and Croydon having the most dangerous streets. Now it does say that obviously the capital is the worst in the UK. I don't know if that is per capita though. So I don't know if for every 100,000 people if it's still the worst amount of stabbings or not. But as a net total, it absolutely is the worst. But it's actually expected because London's the largest centre for people, possibly part of it as well. London is heart of all knife crime in England. Met response to 13,405 incidents. 49,991 non-fatal crimes involving knives between October 21 and June 22. So basically 50,000 non-fatal crimes involving knives in a year. That's just insane. Well, sorry, 6 months, I should say. 679 murders. 38% were the results of assault using a knife or sharp instrument. Crazy. Absolutely nearly 2 murders a day. Westminster has the highest rate of offences by population. Well, there we go. That answers my question. With 253 since June. Crazy. Met Police responding to 13,400 incidents involving knives in just 12 months is a further sign of lawless London has become the knife crime capital of the country. Yeah, well, this isn't, to me, a surprise, and I think to many people who may be viewing this video, or many people you may know. Now, obviously, recently we've had all the BLM protests and anti-lockdown protests, and we've had all like the George Floyd stuff and all that other things, police taking a knee and self-flagellating over racism, and we need more diversity. To me, this is a natural consequence of that. Now, we'll share an article which I've also opened up for this, which is from the London Assembly's official website, and it says on there, just for this one basic quip, and it's black people in London make up 13% of the population, but are responsible for 45% of all knife crime. So when I'm saying that this is to do with like Black Lives Matter and the police taking a knee and courts being more lenient on initial because courts are for per capita, a black person is less likely to get sentenced for a first-time offence than a white person, and I think that plays into it as well, because I think it does play into a sort of superiority complex within the community, where you do have these gangs where they think they're absolutely untouchable, and it also, I think, bleeds from, although it is a separate demographic and a separate crime, but also from the prevalence of the grooming gang scandal and how those individuals have been allowed to, for some case decades, even get away with the crimes. Keighley's a great example of that, where there's examples of parliamentarians, the MP for Keighley, wanting investigations into grape gangs since about 2002. And there's repeated reportings of the MP there asking for interventions and the government looking into rape gangs there and getting absolutely nothing. It's absolutely no surprise that you have these minorities with, and these are my words, having a chip on the shoulder, some of them, and thinking that they can, because they quite rightly can do, get away with crime. Even as far as the current mayor taking away stop and search, which was absolutely pivotal in curbing crime, when Boris Johnson, for all his failures as an individual, he did get control of the violence in London at least. So between October 21 and June 22, 50,000 non-fatal crimes using knives were recorded. We read that. The equivalent of 136 incidents every single day. That is wild. Absolutely wild. 136. Now, obviously, London's a big place, really big. And I'm not saying you're going to see all that all the time. It's not like every time you're walking down the street, you're going to see knives flailing about. But 136 a day, you've got a good chance of seeing one. I'd say one a month. You know, it wouldn't be unreasonable, depending on where you live, of seeing knives getting pulled out once a month on people and seeing serious incidents like that. That is just crazy. In the period, knife offences recorded by the Met Police increased from 10,000 to 11,000, a rate of 125 incidents per 100,000. Those are rounded numbers that I've given, by the way, so if that doesn't add up, don't worry about it. Of the 679 homicides investigated in England and Wales during the time, 38%, which is 258, were a result of an assault using a knife or sharp instrument. Nearly 40%, that's over a third. My goodness. You know, and they go on about in this country, you know, I speak quite a lot, even in my private life, about how people should be allowed to own firearms for self-defence purposes. And people are like, oh, it'd be wild, it'd be like the Wild West, people would be going around shooting everybody and there'd be murders happening all the time. It's like, well, it's already happening. Guns are outlawed. People are walking around with knives and they're stabbing people instead of shooting them. So it hasn't stopped any crime, in my opinion. And to be quite honest with you, I think a lot more citizens, if they were armed with a gun, would be more willing to intervene. Because the problem with knives is knives are illegal to carry around unless you've got a very good reason to do it. So you can't just walk around with like a 6-inch blade for no reason. You need to have a reason for that in this country. Whereas if people are allowed to carry a firearm for defensive purposes... So sorry, I'll go back to that knife assault. You've got a completely unarmed citizenry. Who the hell is going to run up to somebody who's stabbing somebody else? Even if knives were legal to carry, who's still going to run up to somebody else with a knife when they've got a knife? Because you're both within stabbing distance of each other. You've got a 50-50 chance, realistically, you know, being stabbed. Even you know, like, I do martial arts, and the one thing that we teach brand new people, because you get people coming in who are new, and they're going about, oh, let's do all this knife play. And don't get me wrong, it's fun doing knife self-defence. However, the reality of knife self-defence is even if you've got somebody who's like a 20-year black belt with you know, like defending themselves from knives, they've got a 50-50 chance of defending themselves at best. You know, like putting a knife into an uninitiated person's hand is like giving somebody 20 years of martial arts training. You know, like instantly like that. Like, you know, like Matrix style. You know, like when Neo gets all that information uploaded into his head instantly. That's how powerful a knife is. It's such a force multiplier. It's terrifying when you actually understand it and you realise. And it's not like you see in the films where it's all like, whoa, whoa. Somebody's just going to run up to you, grab hold of you, and just go stab, 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 stab. That's how it goes. Just stab like a sewing machine. That's how they're going to stab you, or overarm stabbing you. You know, and even if you put your hands up, they're going to stab through your hands, stab through your arms. Eventually, you're going to turn your back on them and run, and then they're going to stab you in the back. It's absolutely brutal. So people have these fantasies of coming in thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to do all this wushu stuff and martial arts stuff. It's like, no mate, the best thing you can do is run if somebody's got a knife, if you can. You know, like it's such a terrifying force multiplier putting a knife in something. So to run up to somebody and try and fight them with a knife, oh man, you've got to be an absolute nut job or completely ignorant of the dangers. Crazy. Which is why I believe that firearms should be allowed. Because straight away, you can, if you've got like a gang with a knife trying to assault a 70-year-old man, or even, let's make it more extreme, a 70-year-old woman even. What chance has she got of defending herself from a 20-year-old man with a knife? She hasn't got one. But you put a 45 caliber handgun in her hands, straight away, that's even the odds and tip the scales in her favour, because she's going to put a dinner plate sized hole in that person's chest. And if other people around are carrying them, if somebody starts kicking off in the street, you can have somebody across the road can pull out their gun. They are nowhere near the danger. But that criminal, they are now the one in the danger zone because they are within range of that person with that cannon in their hands. And that's why I think firearms should be legal, because in my opinion, an armed citizenry is a polite citizenry. And yeah, I do think, by the way, that we should be allowed to shoot people, to kill them when they're involved in serious crimes, even for things like muggings and burglary and stuff like that. If you're at home at night and somebody comes into your house, you should be allowed to blow their head off the shoulders, in my opinion. I have absolutely no time of day for criminals breaking into other people's homes or trying to steal things from other people. Not got a single sympathy for them. So Mail Online can reveal between June and November this year, Met Police recorded a further 6,843 knife crimes. Oh my goodness. Between June and November, with 1,973 resulting in injury or death. I imagine a lot of those will have been robberies, street robberies, I imagine, or threatening people and intimidation. you know, like somebody looking at somebody in the street for, you know, as people do, you just look at somebody and they'll pull out a knife. What are you effing looking at, fella? What are you looking at? Like, I tell you what, thugs like that, you pull a gun out and them, pow pow, pull a couple in the chest. I tell you what, it soon sort them gangs' attitudes out. Mail Online can reveal between June and November this year. Oh, sorry, I've already read that. Just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, another thing I want to say on this as well. People might be saying, oh, well, you know, like we've got all these crimes, but the murder rate's not as high as it's ever been, you know, throughout history. You know, I think it was the 70s was the worst rate for murder, which we had a much smaller population than we do now. And on the face of it, I'd say absolutely, yeah. But the difference is, though, is now we have far superior medical techniques for treating things like stabbings and gunshot wounds that people that would have died 30, 40 years ago are now surviving. So it's only because of modern medicine now that the murder rate also isn't going through the roof. I wouldn't be surprised if we were using like 1970s medical techniques if murder rates were twice as high as what they currently are. It's just absolutely crazy, this. So the Central Borough of Westminster has the highest rate of offences by population, with 253 since June. Now that, by the way, is very, very worrying, because for those of you who don't know, Westminster is where the Houses of Parliament are. You know, and you've also got the Buckingham Palace, I think that's in Westminster, Horse Guards, which is basically the head of the army. You've just got all the real big things in Westminster, you know, like there's very, very wealthy area of London, you know, incredibly rich people live there as well, you know, it's right in the heart of the capital. And for that to be happening in the centre of the city, which in theory should be the safest part of the city, that just shows you, just really, really does show you the state of London and just how out of control that city is. And I think I think it is in part due to the amount of not only immigration directly, but also people born from immigrants as well. So the communities, the wider communities as a whole. So like the black communities there, you know, the Eastern European communities, you know, like Indian or Pakistani communities, whatever else. You know, I do think all these foreign communities where they are in such large numbers that they haven't integrated whatsoever, and they've basically just become enclaves of the places where they've come from, and they're just continuing what happens in those other countries. It's just insane. Kensington and Chelsea recorded 89 incidents with 273 in Southwark, 113 in Greenwich and 120 in Islington. I mean, this is just central London. Like this, Kensington and Chelsea, I mean, that is, again, mega money there. Chelsea is where some of the Russian oligarchs have lived. You know, like, you're talking billionaires, the wealthiest people in the world. You know, like, just insane. August proved the most dangerous month across the board, with 1,125 offences alone. Well, that's because it's summer months. That's it is weather dependent, unfortunately, knife crime. So in the colder months, there's less people out in the streets, so you get less crime on the streets. It's just basic arithmetic in that regard. Nearly a quarter of all killings and more than half of shootings in London are linked to gangs. Yeah, no surprise. And I bet, as I said before, which I'll put the link in, the 13% of the population being black, committing nearly 50, I think it's 48% of all stabbings, I wouldn't be surprised if nearly 100% of that 48% of crimes was gang related. With nearly a quarter of all killings, more than half shootings in London linked to gangs, Mayor Sadiq Khan revealed earlier this year. Yeah, well, he's created this situation. This is the strength that he wants in that. And when people like him say diversity is our strength, he doesn't mean. And this is what you've got to understand about the way he's not talking about all of us. He's talking about from his point of view. So him as a political activist and a politician and as a human rights lawyer who has represented some of the worst people in the world. We're talking Guantanamo Bay terrorists and he's tried to block the deportation of some very, very extreme individuals, Islamists. So that man is, in my opinion, he's not to be trusted. So when he says things like diversity is our strength, he means it's his strength and people who are aligned with his ideology, which I think is undermining the United Kingdom. And I do believe that's his long-term goal, and people like him. Can't prove it, obviously. That is just my opinion. Got to say that for the legal reasons. But he warned knife crimes are not solely a gang issue and affect the wider community. Well, no, because when you, it's like in the Wild West. Everybody had a gun because everybody needed a gun. You know, and this is what's happening here now. You've got people walking around with knives because the young men, and it is predominantly young men getting killed and predominantly young men doing the killing. So you've got lots and lots of young people going out in the streets, idolising gangs. And I was young once, so I was an idiot. Most young men are idiots when they're young. You have a chip on your shoulder, and you walk around, give me effing respect and all that crap. And that's what this comes down to. And so you have young people who would normally not be have such a proclivity for crime and violence are getting drawn into this and having to carry knives. So, and there's probably, some of these stop and searches, yeah, it is. There are going to be young black men who are getting pulled over, who are genuinely innocent and aren't involved in crime, and are going to be carrying a knife, and they're going to be getting arrested for it because they're carrying a knife for their own defence. And they might be saying things like, "You're only pulling me because I'm black." It's like, well, yes, that is true, but it's not just because you're black. It's because of your age. It's because of the area that you're in, and it's also because of the way you're dressing. I imagine if a young black man walks around in a nice three-piece suit and a pair of smart polished-up brogues with a decent haircut and a shaved face or at least a trimmed beard. I know I look like a right scruff bag now. Like I should be going off bloody crab fishing, going out on a trawler or something. But you're probably not going to get pulled by the police dressed like. I imagine you're not. And I imagine when you walk into the shops, people are going to be more inclined to call you sir as well. So a lot of this is to do with the way you're carrying yourself, and it is driven by statistics and targets. So that's all I have to say to people like that, really. Stop. You don't want to get treated like a yardie. Don't dress like a yardie. Just click the page over by accident then. Let's find this again. It's the only thing we're using a touchpad for reading the news. And while I'm trying to talk on screen. Research undertaken at the time found young male gang members the most likely people to carry knives in London. Yeah, there you go. Meanwhile, outside of London, knife crimes in the West Mids also increased from 3,299 to 4,958, 169 per 100,000. Again, West Midlands, you're talking Birmingham there and Yardley, places like that. It's all large Afro-Caribbean communities and large Pakistani, Bangladeshi communities. So again, this is where a lot of this, and it's all gangs. So again, this is no surprise to me, and you'll find the same in Manchester as well. This is even more surprising because we all think of Manchester and Liverpool as being absolute cesspits of crime in certain areas, but they aren't as diverse. So they are getting overtaken, and we're talking not crime as a whole here, but per 100,000 people. It's everybody thinks of, where I live at least, in the northwest of England. Everybody thinks, when you think of theft, you think Liverpool. It's natural. You think violent crime, you think Liverpool and Manchester. But they are getting absolutely overshadowed here by this because they don't have the same diversity levels. I remember reading an article. I'll try and find it to put in the link. I remember a few years ago reading in one of the papers. Oh, it's going back to about 2015 or something like that. And they were talking to a young black man in this article, and they hid his identity because he was a gang member. And he was talking about how they, as a gang, they were all born in Britain, him and his gang, and the people in his community. And he was saying that they were having to up the levels of violence and aggression because loads of Somalians had moved nearby and had just recently come off the boat. And that's when we started hearing about these like zombie knives and machete attacks on the streets of London. And they were getting targeted by them as well. So because you had this import of extremely ultra-violent Africans moving into the centre of London, it was then forcing other gangs who, don't get me wrong, would have been reprehensible people involved in all sorts of horrible things, but possibly much more lenient in the outcomes, maybe give somebody a good shoeing rather than stabbing them. But because of what's happened with mass immigration, it's forced other gangs then to become even more violent, which then has an exponential growth in violent crime and the levels of violence that's being perpetrated in that area. It starts feeding off the violence, the violence. The primary factor in... Oh, sorry, I've just skipped a bit. The data which analysed incidents police responded to over a 9-month period from October 21 to June 22 found that while still high, knife crime has actually fallen below pre-COVID levels. In the year ending March 2020, 55,000 offences were reported. My God. The primary factor is that fall can be attributed to a 27% fall in robberies using knives, but there was an increase in all violent and sexual offences involving knives except for homicide, which decreased by 1% to 259 offences. Homicide levels have also dropped by 5% compared to the year ending 2020. Well, silver linings and everything, I suppose, but these rates of crime are still absolutely insane. I know in 2019 that the stabbing or knife crime rate was the highest since records began in, I think it was 1949. There's a chart here showing you all the areas of London, all the boroughs, with the amount of knife crime in all of them. Southwark 348, Lambeth 327. My goodness. I think Bexley and Sutton are the lowest at 88 each. You know, which I suppose is manageable for the areas. The study also examined trends relating to gun crime in England and Wales and found police recorded 5,976 offences involving firearms in the reporting. Well, I mean, there you go. Just shy of let's call it 6,000 firearms offences. Why are firearms illegal? All the criminals that want them have got them anyway. The only people who haven't got firearms are the citizens of the country. So they're enabled to defend themselves against these criminals who have clearly got firearms. You know, this is just maddening. This represented a 10% decrease in gun crimes compared to pre-COVID levels in 2020, and on par with records of those recorded in 2021. So, you know, you're talking like 6,000 firearm incidents with the police, you know, from 2021, and then 2022 you're talking 6,500. You know, these are going to be guns getting confiscated at the time as well. You know, so it's not like it's the same guns circulating around people. You know, you're talking about these guns, mostly, all right, maybe sometimes it's somebody getting caught after the event and the guns disappeared, but a lot of these, they'll be getting the guns. So it's not like the police are even clearing the firearms off the street. I'm nearly at the end now anyway. I'm just going to have a quick flick through these last bits. A total of 1,866 offences were committed using handguns, while there were 439 incidents involving shotguns. The data involves any crimes in which firearms were shot, used as a blunt instrument or as a threat. Gun crime is also trending down within London, according to Met Police data, which recorded 1,464 offences in the year of September 2022. Lambeth and Haringey experienced the most gun violence within that reporting window with 102 and 94. Yeah, known incidents. Yeah, it is known incidents. Richmond upon Thames is the safest suburb with just 13 gun offences. I'll have a look at what their knife crime was actually. 50. Oh yeah, so yeah, they got the lowest knife crime as well. Overall, the safest area to live in London, according to this. I don't know much about Richmond. I don't know if it's. I think it is quite a nice area. I think it has nice area parts in it. There's quite a lot of money there. Former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan Smith said earlier this year London is inundated with crime at the moment, and apart from putting out statements, Sadiq Khan has done next to nothing on this. Absolutely true, but unfortunately Ian Duncan Smith is part of a party which has done absolutely nothing but increase the prevalence of crime by allowing mass immigration into the country, and by also not repealing Tony Blair's firearms gun laws, handgun laws. So, you know, it's all well and good Ian Duncan Smith saying that, but what's his party actually done to change this? Nothing. All they've done is come down harder on the average citizen. You say mean words or naughty words, you know, a particular racial slur beginning, which is an acronym for it is ginger. You know, you're going to be, the police will be kicking down your door faster than you can say magic carpet ride. But you've got these sorts of crimes happening on an absolutely crazy level, and they do nothing to actually allow the citizens to protect themselves other than taking away our rights further. You know, there was recently, and I might do a story on this later, there was recently a case of guys broadcasting Premier League football matches. Now, for profit, they were selling, I think it was like Fire Sticks that had certain software put onto them, and allowing people to watch Premier League football matches for about 50 quid for the year or something stupid like that. Those guys got 11 years each in prison. That's crazy, isn't it? There's no harm been caused. Nobody's been hurt. All right, you could turn around and say, well, the Premier League's lost money, advertisers, whatever. I doubt it. I imagine most of those people would have gone somewhere like to a pub or something and watched it instead, but instead of choosing to watch it at home. So, you know, there's absolutely nobody hurt, and they're getting 11 years in prison for that. And yet the government is more, you get involved in these gun and knife crimes and you're looking at about 5 or 6 years in prison, you know, as long as you haven't killed anybody. You know, you might get a 10-year sentence, but you'll be out after 5 years with good behaviour. It's just absolutely crazy. We have gang warfare on the streets of London in some boroughs. He needs to make this his number one priority and focus on getting rid of these gangs. That's Ian Duncan Smith. But Chief Constable of the West Midlands, Sir David Thompson, said told the Times after the release of the crime survey for England and Wales that the way crime is measured is completely mad. He said minor infringements, such as spats between neighbours, were being recorded as criminal acts and had the potential to skew the public. Well, that is absolute horse manure coming from that man, because he is part of a system which he records and reports on non-crime hate incidences. So you could have somebody saying, having an argument in the street with somebody. Let's say me. I could be having an argument with somebody, like there's some guy a couple of doors down from where I live, and they're from, I think it's Poland. I think I say hello to them and that. I could have an argument with them in the street. Now, another one of my neighbours could report that to the police, and the police, even without interviewing me or speaking to me, could record that as a non-crime hate incident, and that would then go on my permanent criminal record. But I wouldn't be able to know about that. We having to go through an absolute crazy show of applications for courts, and that could turn up on a DBS check. So if I wanted to, say, become a teacher or work as a security guard, that non-crime hate incidents, even though I haven't committed a crime in this scenario, and even though nobody's been interviewed and no arrests have been made, could prevent me from getting a job. And that is what that chief constable is involved in this. So it's all well and good him saying that crimes are measured is completely mad, but he's absolutely responsible for that. And by the way, this recording non-crime hate incidences, the police can ignore that because that only comes from the College of Police, which aren't responsible for actually telling the police what to do. They're an advisory body. So the police could, well within their powers, stop recording those, but they don't, because it looks good on the targets and on the papers. So I just absolutely don't believe a single word that man's saying, at least from what I'm reading here. I mean, if more information comes to light with me with regards to that, I'll be more than happy to change my mind. But as it stands with the information I've got here, I think that's absolutely rich and poppycock coming from him. We're recording colossal amounts of stuff in this violence category that makes the public think violence is going through the roof, but their actual experience of violence is going down. He said, well, that's all well and good for him saying that violence is going down, but is it? Tell that to the people who are the victims of it. We like to tell people to be polite and civil, but it's our job about crime, where somebody might wave a stick at you or come around and be rude at your children. That's incivility. It shouldn't be a crime. Well, it's not. That's down to your police prosecuting it as a crime. But it's getting really close to how we're recording it. Well, you don't have to record it. You actually don't have to record it if you don't want to. You can just give everybody a warning and leave it at that. So that's down to you and your officers recording crap and wasting your own time. Mr. Thompson has called on Home Office inquiry into the way crime is recorded and attempt to make it even across the board. Hello, it's probably jumped a little bit. I've just had to do a minor edit. Me memory I got to the very last word of the article and then it flashed up memory full. So anyway, I've got to the end of the article. What was I saying? To make it even across the board in different departments. Yeah, so it's just madness. The whole situation's madness. I'm a firm proponent of people being allowed to sort out problems themselves. I do think the government gets far too involved in day-to-day dealings. I don't think it's conducive for a functioning society for the police and government to get involved as much as they do. At the end of the day, we're not automatons and we're not ants. We don't live in a hive. Yeah, people fall out, people fight. That's normal. I don't think if you've got, say, two people next door neighbours fighting, actually getting into a fist fight, as long as nobody's seriously hurt and that's the end of it, I don't think that the police should really get involved in that. And same, like I've said before, if you've got a mugging happening in the street and the victim pulls out a gun and blasts the mugger, it's their own fault for doing that. I have absolutely no sympathy with that. Obviously, I do think that the police, well, I say with the fighting, like I'm saying with the next door, police probably should turn up and have a quick look. But once they find out that it's just neighbours having a neighbourly dispute, and if both of them come to an agreement that's the end of it, and they shake hands, I think that should be the end of it. Whereas if it's, say, two strangers walking down the street and one of them doesn't like the other one the way one's looking, and it's an antisocial thing in that regard, and it turns into a full-blown fist fight, then you have one guy curb stomping the other guy. That's a bit different. I do think that discretion has to be used. It's a very complicated subject. I don't really have the time to discuss it here, but I do think that I do believe that the police really do get involved far too much minutiae. Same with self-defence. Now, our courts have the whole thing of, and our legal system is reasonable force, and it's like if somebody punches you and then turns around and walks off, in theory, you shouldn't punch that person in the back of the head because they are no longer a threat to you. However, I would say I think it's an absolute natural response for somebody to punch somebody in the back of the head, and possibly even knock them to the floor and give them a kick to the ribs as well. And I don't think that'd be, and I really think that judges in circumstances should be saying, again, it depends on the reason of why the initial punch has happened. But if it's, let's make it dead easy to understand. If the guy just thought it'd be funny to punch a stranger in the face, and then it's resulted in him getting lamped in the back of the head and then pushed to the floor and then getting kicked to the ribs and having a couple of broken ribs, I think the judge should be saying, well, that's your own fault, mate. That's reasonable force in my opinion anyway. I think judges should be looking at that, and also juries as well. I just think we've become such a micromanaged society where, and it's leading to a weakened society as well. And we're seeing this with the way that, myself included, with the way that we're responding to mass immigration. I do not believe that 100 years ago, people in this country would have put up with what's happening at the moment coming across the channel. I just do not believe that it would have been tolerated in any way, shape or form. I don't believe the government would have tolerated it. I don't believe the civil service would have tolerated it. I don't believe the locals would have tolerated it. And I don't think the police or the lifeguards would have tolerated it. And to be quite honest with you, I think those people coming over on the boats every day, we're getting a damn good thrashing. And then they'd be getting sent back home again, Schnellmachen. I just absolutely think that the government have just beaten down the will of the people in this country so much and tried to make everybody so dependent on the state and the government and the police dealing with all of our problems in every way, shape or form. Even now, you hear about people complaining that the kids are out of control, then demanding that the schools do something about it. It's like, but they're your kids. I know I'm going off on a bit of a rant here, but they're your kids. Deal with them yourself. What are you doing? It's just the whole political structure has just gone too far. It's become this all-encompassing, and it's to do with, I think, going back a long way, but I think it's to do with the gradual increep of socialism into our culture, and we've become a sort of like pseudo-communist authoritarian state. I'm going to leave it there anyway. I'll put the link below. I'll see if I can put some of those other articles in, if I can find them again, that I was talking about before. The main story and the London Assembly one, just really just for the 13% of population and 48%, I think it was, of committing the crimes. So I'll take care and I'll speak to you later. Bye-bye.